for time. So to create these system calls, the first step was to declare them in this header file and include Linux. So their names are syssetFileAdder and sysgetFileAdder, and these are their parameters, and that's how you declare a function. So the next step was to put them in the system call table. They need to have a number so that they can be called from the syscall function from user space, and they just need to be in this table as all their system calls are. So I had to put them in here as well. And then I chose to define them in the xadder.c. I did that because a lot of libraries are included in here and helper functions that support the setx and getxadder system calls, so I figured I could use those to help me make my system calls. So the first step for the getFileAdder system call was to declare the path struct. I tried to use the pathSetAdder function, but that didn't work, and all the other functions that are called on by the pathSetXadder or getXadder function required a path.dentry struct. So in order to get that, I had to create the path struct, initialize the path struct with this userPathAt. I knew this userPathAt function initialized it because the pathSetXadder used this function and passed a reference to path to it, and then later values of path were being used, so I figured it had been initialized by this function. Anyways, once it's been initialized, we can pass it into VFS getXadder. We can pass in user.classification, which is the extended attribute we want to modify, and user is we have to declare that it's in user space. We pass this reference in. This is the long, and this is the reference, so it writes to the reference. If this error occurs, then that means that the attribute has not yet been declared, and that it should be set to 0 because all the files should have the attribute is initialized to 0. So if it hasn't been declared, then the set hasn't touched it yet, and it should just have 0. So we return 0 if that happens. And then if everything goes well, we just return value, which was what was retrieved from the extend attribute. And then for the setFileAdder system call, we pass in the path name and a pointer to a long, which is called value, declare the path struct, initialize it the same way as we did in the get system call. And here we just pass in the value. We don't pass in a reference because it's already a pointer, and then if everything goes well, we just dereference this value and return that. Otherwise, we'll return a -1 if an error occurs, or here -1 if you can't find the file. So now on to my test files and whatnot. So you can see ls-l, what are the permissions? Classification.h is the file I'm playing with. This file currently has no permissions. So if we try and compile, it's not going to compile, and we have to use sudo because otherwise there's going to be a permissions error. So with sudo, everything compiles. However, nothing works because we didn't use sudo to read the out file. So nothing works. However, if we do use sudo to read the out file, then we have the correct permissions and everything works. If we try and change a value in here really quickly, like say this, we set it to 5, and then we compile again, then you can see here it was 6, and then it's set to 5, and then the get value is 5. So everything's working fine. I also did tests by shutting it off and turning it back on to check if the memory was persistent. That worked. And I did more permissions tests as well, in addition to just basic functionality tests, and to see if the attribute was initially set to 0, which it was. So everything's working great. Thanks for listening.